X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to Battle of the Atom! It is the weekly X-Men podcast where I, Zach Jenkins, and my co-host, Adam Reck, sit around and talk about 3 X-Men stories from all of X-Men history and put them on our list of best to worst X-Men stories. It's like the thing I have on my website about characters, but with stories because everyone loves lists.
It's Adam, a great idea.
Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing just as well as the other 3 minutes ago. In case you remember from last week, we're still batch recording these because of timelines.
And it's working great.
It is working great. We're just nailing them. So we've got 3 stories to get through today, don't we?
Yeah, and I would argue 3 good ones. You know, we might be able to argue a little bit about that, but
there's people who are going to argue that one of these is.
Yes, I know which one.
They're going to think that it is way worse than I think we do.
Probably.
Good.
Maybe we should jump into it then.
Sure. Our podcast is called Battle of the Atom because it was a good name, and also because I like Battle of the Atom. The 2013 X-Men crossover between Uncanny X-Men, All New X-Men, regular adjectiveless X-Men, and Wolverine and the X-Men.
Are you going to give a shot to the creative teams on this? It's endless.
It was a 10-issue series with a lot of creators. The primary ones, Brian Michael Bendis, Jason Aaron, Brian Wood, with art duties by Frank Chow, Stuart Immonen, Chris Bachalo, David Lopez, Giuseppe Camacoli. He has a very Italian name that I cannot pronounce.
I like that.
But Asad Ribic also did art on this, and it's not credited anywhere.
That's weird. He's not credited for number 10?
No. Well, number 10 got crazy because it's credited that Bendis wrote it, but Aaron actually wrote it, and it's credited art to somebody else, and it was actually Ribic.
So strange.
So 10 was like on a weird time crunch, and then they went to Asad Ribic, which doesn't make sense because, I mean, Secret Wars was delayed by 6 months or whatever.
I think, you know, you were just joking about the idea that, you know, maybe this isn't the best loved thing, but it really starts so strong and ends so disjointed. You like Battle of the Atom? I
do like Battle of the Atom.
I do too.
So I really got back into X-Men with the Bendis run. I had read Gillen's stuff through AVX. I liked it, but I was on the Marvel subscription. Like, it got sent to my house.
Oh, okay.
Because I was in college, I didn't have any comic stores around me, and I didn't know how they worked.
Yeah.
So it got sent to my house, and my subscription just ran out at like issue 3 of All New X-Men, and I just never re-upped.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to a comic book shop with one of my friends from college right before I graduated. And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, X-Men's super good. You should read that." And I said, okay. And I got back into it, and I loved it. But Battle of the Atom came out. I got married. Battle of the Atom came out, I think it started after I got married. And then we were super poor for like 3 months. And I didn't buy comics. So I got halfway through Battle of the Atom, and I had to stop.
Some people might say that's a good thing.
I don't. Battle of the Atom's cool. It's a X-Men story with a bunch of time travel, a bunch of talks about who everyone's kids are, a bunch of drama, and at the end of the day, it's all about Jean Grey.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like all of X-Men right there.
Yeah, there is some really great stuff here. I think one of the things that I'm similar to you in that I got really invested back into the franchise with the Bendis era, and to see Stuart Immonen's work here, to see Chris's Bachalo's work here, you know, the Art Adams covers. This feels important, you know.
Yeah.
It does. You know, it's a 10-part multi-series crossover. It has a big feel to it. You know, there's also, like you just mentioned, there's some super, super great elements here. I personally love the Future Brotherhood. I love the future X-Men that are introduced in this whole thing. I think what might leave the bad taste in people's mouths might be I think there was a promise going into this, at least, maybe from an advertising perspective, that we were going to get some answers about the 05. And those did not come out of this story.
Nope.
Aside from they can't go back. There does seem to be some push-pull with the creative teams here in terms of what the ongoing, overall story is here. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so the history of this, from what I've been able to find, it was actually pitched by Aaron. It was one of his ideas.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it feels like it should be a Bendis thing.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't. It was Jason Aaron who went with it. And I don't know. Battle of the Atom, I think my issues with Battle of the Atom more come from what happened because of it, not because of what it is. Because it completely derails Brian Wood's X-Men run that had 4 issues in at the time. And frankly, there were 4 real good.
Crossing over with
5 and 6.
That's
it was
crazy.
5 and 6 for him. And then he derailed it more because his follow-ups to that first arc weren't good.
Mm-hmm.
But so that got weird. It was right after the Hellfire Academy stuff with with Wolverine and.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a follow-up for the stuff in All New and Uncanny. But it puts everyone in a weird place at the end of it. Kitty Pryde at the end leaves the school for kind of dubious reasons that no one believed her when she said, I don't trust these guys from the future.
I think that is a key point in this story. And I don't know whether it's just the mix of the creative teams or the publishing schedule, what it was, but there is something very strange as you read through it. If you read it all in a batch, maybe if you read it month to month, this may not have been a big issue, or week to week. I remember the publishing schedule of this being pretty fast.
It was just 2 months. Yeah. And there were issues that came out on the same day. I think 3 and 4 came out the same day, maybe. Okay. I don't remember. But I don't actually remember. And it was in the summer, so.
I get the impression that there just may have been some lapses in communication because there seem to be elements from issue to issue that repeat themselves. There's a lot of, let's collect ourselves. And there's a lot of big, quote unquote, I'll put this in quotes, big decision making from the characters that it doesn't always make sense. You're not sure why a character did something other than just to advance the story so that another group can chase after those characters or they can confront them in some way later. So that by the time you get to something like Kitty doesn't trust, the Jean Grey school anymore, and she's going to run off with the 05 to the Uncanny team, you're not really sure why she's doing it necessarily.
Yeah, I think this could have been fixed by being 7 issues long. You cut some crap from it and it's better. I think you say, hey, Brian Wood, we're going to let you sit this one out. Keep going your story. That gives you 2 issues out of it. And maybe you only do 1 of Wolverine and because it doesn't care about those characters.
And it's so interesting to me that I never knew that this was an Aaron pitch because it feels so much like it could have just been an Uncanny and All New crossover and that would have been fine.
Right. And whoever on Twitter is going to at me about where I found that, I don't know. It was in the past. I read a lot of X-Men journalism.
Zack's an expert, damn it. He knows his stuff.
Good. Hey, that's our first swear. Good job. And it was a mild one, too, everybody.
Did I say damn in the last episode? Maybe not. I don't know.
No, I think you said, I don't know.
We'll keep it PG.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we actually ever talked about that. We'll figure that out later. But we've done very good so far.
Can I talk about one highlight here?
Yes.
The one of the scenes that I absolutely love is the reveal of why the X-Men, the future X-Men, then become the Future Brotherhood, which is Dazzler for president.
Yeah.
I love that. And I don't know if it's just because Immonen is doing it, but...
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Here, and, I thought it might be wise just to take a second to say that, not a huge fan of, Frank, you said Chow. I've always said Cho. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. His trollish behavior, but that first issue is gorgeous as well. You can't argue with the fact that the guy knows how to draw.
Yeah. He's just He's just a dingus about it.
Agreed. But there's some really beautiful moments in this story, so I like revisiting it. I think it's good. Yeah. Should we try and rank it?
I like it better than Deadly Genesis. I'll say that for sure.
Big time. Absolutely.
I don't think it's better than the Dupe issue.
Okay.
I think that's my ceiling right now. That Dupe issue is solid from start to finish, and this one has some bumps in the road.
Now, we still have Giant Size at 3, correct?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so, all right, now we're going to maybe bring on the ire here.
So when we put the Dupe ahead of Giant Size, the criteria that I used, at least, was does this accomplish the goal of its story well? And I think Battle of the Atom struggles with that. I think that's the core thing. Giant Size X-Men #1 does a better job at bringing all these new characters in, setting things up. So I think it goes under. But Battle of the Atom also has future Molly Hayes.
Those future Brotherhood and future X-Men, I mean, when I saw on the first issue of X-Men Blue that the future Brotherhood work is going to come back, I haven't had this reaction to a comic book in years. I literally was like, yeah!
Cullen Bunn loves bringing stuff back. That's why I like him.
Like, I cannot wait for that arc when that occurs.
Yep.
So,
So good.
There's some really good stuff here. I think 4 is appropriate.
#4 between Giant Size X-Men #1 and Deadly Genesis.
Yep.
Battle of the Atom.
All right.
Our next book. Adam, you're excited about this one.
I'm very excited about this one.
What is this one?
All right. So the next book on the list is Excalibur Mojo Mayhem. And Zach, as you know, I didn't really gush over this with the Battle of the Atom covers, but I am a huge Art Adams fan. I love his stuff. Almost the majority of the back issues that I go out of my way to collect involve him in some way, be it the covers, be it the interiors, whatever it is. Really nice guy. I've had a pleasure of meeting him a couple of times at cons, but I love Mojo Mayhem. And I say this, it's called Excalibur, but it's not really much of an Excalibur story. It's much more of the next issue of Long Shot. So it picks up with, and also it continues the X-Babies storyline of all things from the X-Men annuals.
The X-Babies are the best bad idea.
Yeah. I mean,
they should never work.
The X-Babies should not work. And the fact that Ricochet Rita from the Long Shot mini is pretty much the protagonist in this, aside from Kitty. I love Mojo storylines. I'm very excited that they've announced that one of the X-Men Marvel Legacy things is going to be a Mojo World crossover. I sincerely love this kind of wacky, self-referential meta storytelling. And the basic premise of this book is that Mojo is sending the agent, that is the villain of the book, to go and sign the X-Babies so that they can be the prisoners of the Mojoverse. It's a great idea. It's a great premise. The agent then pretends to be all of these different people to try and get them to sign. And there's a little bit of needling here of the whole Marvel structure. There's a page in particular here where Ricochet, Rita, and the X-Babies come upon this huge complex, which some of the letters are missing, but it is the House of Ideas, and it's covered in crossover titles. So there's this little nudging about Marvel's decision making and its business practices. And yeah, go ahead.
It's not just Marvel here, because there's Invasion on here. There's Darkseid's head is in that. It says Crisis on one of the buildings. Like, they're pushing the whole comic book industry here.
Absolutely. And you see Claremont dip into this meta and humorous style, and it doesn't always work. I think particularly about the issue that Liefeld did that comes after the Australian X-Men at the mall.
Oh, you're talking about Men.
Yeah,
You're
men.
talking about men.
Yeah, which to me, like, we should probably put that on the list at some point.
We're going to put that on the list, and you and me are going to have some disagreements. I can already tell.
Yeah, like, I feel like sometimes Claremont's comedy, it works a little bit more than other times. I feel like it's working really, really well here. I think another real plus to this book is that, he's not taking himself seriously at all. He's in this book. His favorite band is in this book. His friends are in this book. And it's sincerely designed to just be similar to annuals, which is another thing that I'm a big fan of. It's just fun.
Yeah, this is a fun little story. It's got gorgeous Art Adams art. I'm flipping through it right now. The inks by Terry Austin work really well. It's got Glynis Oliver colors.
Yep.
And same Glynis Oliver, whose maiden name was Glynis Wine, the person who did all of Giant Size #1. Like, this is a very classic team doing all the work on X-Men stuff. This is great. I mean, there's some stuff that I don't love. There's a weird kitty's running around in her underwear a couple of pages that's like, okay, guys, she's young. Let's try not to sexualize her. Dang it, I stole that from Jay and Miles. I am sorry, guys. They stole that from Community, so I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I do like the stuff with Ricochet Rita, because it really throws her on the path to becoming Spiral.
Yes.
In this. This is when she goes back for the X-Babies, which is... It's cool. I like it. I liked seeing it. This is a fun little story. I think in the same way as No More Humans, it's inconsequential.
Sure.
But I think this does a way better job than No More Humans of being something I want to go back to.
Yeah, I find myself going back to wacky annuals. I find myself going back to, one-shots like this that this is an interesting era of Marvel that they're willing to do things like this. The Marvel graphic novel, the one-shots, the mini-series that, I believe that was one of the little sound bites that came out of that disastrous, press-attended summit that Marvel did. Was that I think Feig said, or not Feig, who's
David Gabriel.
Someone at the meeting said something like, if a series isn't going to last more than 4 issues, that's like the death knell. And I like that there was a certain point where the company was willing to just make fun stuff like this.
And I think they've turned on that a bit recently, like the Spirits of Vengeance story that's coming out. That's a mini.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 5-issue mini.
Yeah. That's part of Legacy, right? That's coming out.
Yeah. So I think they're changing.
Hey, it's going to be what it's going to be as a business model, but I yearn for stuff like this. I think it's great that it exists. Where would you rank it?
That's a good one. This is super enjoyable. So it reminds me a lot of the Dupe one-shot that we're talking about. It's a funny, inconsequential look at a corner of the X-Men universe that fans love and everyone else is befuddled by.
Yeah. You wouldn't give this to anybody as like, hey, listen to the X-Men.
This is hey, you've been reading X-Men for a while. You're someone who's real into the Toys R Us X-Men special that was made in the 90s. Here, read this. You're going to love it. By the way, we're going to rank that Toys R Us special, even if I just have to talk about it.
I don't know.
Look in every dollar bin. We'll figure something out. But I don't think it's as good as the Dupe one. Like, that Dupe one is Mike Allred at the top of his game. Which is really close to Art Adams at the top of his game, but I don't think this is the best Art Adams stuff.
No, there's definitely better. I think some of the annual stuff tops this, but
yeah.
I don't think it's better than Giant Size. Do you?
I think it's better than Battle of the Atom.
All right.
We already ranked today.
Then that's where it's going to go. It's going to squeeze in between Giant Size and Battle.
Our new number 4, Excalibur, Mojo, Mayhem. Not Mojo Madness.
No, sorry about that.
Unlike someone tried to convince me of.
I think I was doing that from memory. All right.
Okay.
Now, you said that this last story, you have a lot to say.
We're going to scroll up for this one. This is one I feel strongly about. This is Wolverine Volume 1, issues 1 through 4, which is all the issues of that volume, by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. Dude, I'm not a guy who reads Wolverine solos.
Okay.
I don't read a lot of Wolverine solo stuff. Like, the fact that All New Wolverine is still on my pull list is solely because it's really good. Like, that's a huge gap for me. I've barely read any of Wolverine solo stuff because I just don't necessarily enjoy it.
No, I'm the same way. I have not read the bulk of, what comes after this and the Wolverine patch stuff. Just because it seems superfluous. I'm much more a fan of, Wolverine Jungle Adventure or, I don't know, trying to think of some of the other weird ones that just kind of pop up.
Yeah. This is Claremont and Frank Miller in 1983, I think.
Yep.
It's two of the best creators of the 80s. At the top of their game, you get Claremont getting to do cool family dynamic stories. You get Frank Miller getting to draw ninjas, which is the only thing the man should ever be allowed to do.
I'm pretty sure that's in my notes. Ninjas. As big as life.
Somehow Frank Miller's less racist against ninjas than he is anything else. Like, he wrote Ronin, which was super good. He The Hand, I guess, all of the Marvel ninjas.
Yeah.
Like, Frank Miller is so stellar on this. In that last fight, in issue 4 between what's his name? Yoshida's
Shinjin?
Shinjin, yeah, Shinjin Yoshida. Shinjin versus Wolverine with the katanas. It is like Claremont just knows. Oh wait, Frank Miller's the best at this.
Yeah, let's let him just have these 3 pages to kill it.
It's silent. It's perfect.
Well, and it very heavily, the trade that I have pairs this with the Paul Smith issues.
Yeah.
And which makes a lot of sense. But you can see that maybe even that sequence might have had an influence on him. I mean, I don't know if he was able to see these pages before he did the Silver Samurai fight. That's also a classic scene from Uncanny. But,
like Paul Smith is one of the best artists in X-Men history.
Yeah.
But pairing that Silver Samurai fight, I'm flipping to it in my trade too. That fight from Uncanny X-Men 173 versus Wolverine number 4, it's just not fair. You're talking about, someone who's amazing versus someone who's unquestionably the best at this.
Yeah.
This is so good. Also, I don't think that's the best Paul Smith fight.
No, of course not.
He
we
did
all
that
know
whole
what the
thing
best
with
Paul Smith
Callisto.
Yes.
Yeah, Storm versus Callisto.
Yeah, it does not get better than that. But that is a runner-up for that. I mean, it's a really beautiful set of panels there.
Right. And I guess the only other thing I really want to get into about this story is how it gets into Logan's mind. Like, they talk about Logan as a samurai, as a Ronin, as a wandering warrior without a cause. And that it never gets codified as well as it does here. You want to draw a through line from the Wolverine that was fighting Hulk in 1 or 2 random issues that I've actually never read.
I don't know.
To me, Wolverine starts at Giant Size number 1.
No, I definitely read that at some point, but I don't think I own it currently. So,
yeah. But you can draw a through line from that Wolverine to Dark Phoenix Saga, where they finally figure out what Wolverine does and how he's the best at what he does, and that it's not very nice.
It's not.
And then they go to here, and then it's perfect because every other Wolverine story, everything you ever want to do, comes out of this. Old Man Logan comes out of this.
Absolutely.
The introspectiveness. Like, you don't think of Wolverine as a smart, deep character, but so much about Wolverine is about how he thinks. And the way that Claremont writes it. Claremont, who's a guy who says a lot of words, and that's been a joke since like 73. I'm kidding, 76.
It's pretty minimal here.
He knows that for Wolverine, if you've got a 5-word sentence, that's wordy for the guy. He keeps it so tight. It's fantastic. This is one of my favorite X-Men stories of all time. I love the art. It's Frank Miller being amazing. It's Chris Claremont holding back and knowing how to collaborate, which he struggled with, especially some of his late era stuff. He struggles with. Like God Loves Man Kills too. He struggles with it.
Yeah, it's like, who is that character? It's not really identifiable. One of the things that I wrote in my notes here is that this miniseries is, I think the term I used was pre-ubiquitous Wolverine.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about this mini was that Wolverine disappeared from Uncanny X-Men to settle this little feud before he then came back and invited the X-Men to Japan. So there was, I go back and forth on being like a continuity nerd. But I did love that. I do have a certain amount of nostalgia for the editor's note. This takes place before this, and this is where this character's been. This made sense, which I don't necessarily think that the Patch series makes any sense. So I think this series does two things. It humanizes Wolverine, which is what you were just speaking about. But I think it also does something which is very tempting, which had not been done before this mini. And it leads to a lot of different Wolverine stories, which is similar to what, I think a comparison can be made to Batman. You can make him whatever you want. We're going to make Wolverine into a ninja. We're going to make him later on into a spy. We're going to make him into a caveman, and it doesn't necessarily matter. You can put Wolverine into any kind of story. And this kind of sets the precedent for that because, there is some ties back to, the Mariko stuff that happened in Uncanny, but this really sets a new standard for what Wolverine can be and what he will be able to be for the rest of his, I'll say the word life, but we know that's not forever.
Rest in peace, homie. But no, that brings up two big thoughts from my end. One is that how did it take till Old Man Logan for people to say, hey, Cowboy Wolverine would be good?
Yeah.
Like, I know he's always worn a cowboy hat, but we never had a straight up, this is Cowboy Wolverine story
That's
until
a very good point. Yeah.
And two, you bring up the Batman, and Frank Miller is incredibly well known for 1986, The Dark Knight Returns, and 1987, Batman Year One, which are two of the most important comic book stories to ever happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, like, reading through this, just flipping through a couple of pages of it again, this influences The Dark Knight Returns so much. I can't overstate just how big this is. It gets that introspectiveness into the heart of the character, finding someone who's out of their place and doesn't have a spot in this world and doing something unique with them.
Sure.
Oh, I like this series.
It's creating an entire brand within just 4 issues. Would you agree with that? I mean, it sets up a whole another angle to the quote unquote X-Men universe that was not there before.
Oh, yeah, this is some good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's definitely better than the Dupe issue.
Yep.
Is it better than God Loves Man Kills?
I would stop short of saying it's better than God Loves Man Kills, because we are talking about ranking X-Men stories, and this is one X-Man. And maybe this is just my personal prejudice, because I am not a huge, like, Wolverine is my favorite X-Men and guy. I know some people live and die by Logan. I think, he's overexposed. I like Wolverine as mysterious, and searching for the past as opposed to, everywhere and everything. But this is very, very good.
Wolverine's overrated, but Wolverine's still pretty good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love Wolverine.
He's a man whose power is he has 6 knives, always. And if you stab him, he just keeps stabbing.
Yeah.
It's great.
I would say for all time classics, this would fall, for me, number 2 on our list for right now. Because I still think that God Loves Man Kills is this amazing distillation of, the mutant metaphor and things that are crucial to what X-Men is all about. Whereas Wolverine with Frank Miller is a character defining detour that then folds back into continuity.
All right. I don't think here's the thing. I think that Wolverine as a story as a story is better than God Loves Man Kills.
Interesting.
I think you make a very good argument that as a X-Men story, God Loves Man Kills is better.
Yeah.
So this is us, all the X-Men stories, all the stories about the Children of the Atom battling it out. And I think that the argument can be made that God Loves Man Kills is better. I don't hold to that, but I also really like Frank Miller's stories about ninjas.
Yeah.
So that works in my favor, but I think I can concede to Wolverine. Volume 1. The story about Wolverine going to Japan being the number 2 story on our list.
Okay. All right. I know that may be a hard pill there, but I do think that, if our objective is ultimately X-Men, then this could, stay at the number 2 slot for a very long time.
It's really good. Our 1-2 is real stacked.
It's so interesting that you are so taken by this because, I remember coming to early Frank Miller via 90s Frank Miller. I think my first Frank Miller might have been Sin City. Reading it far too young, I probably should not have been reading Sin City. And then reading Elektra Lives Again, which is my all-time favorite Frank Miller story. That is an absolutely beautiful large format book that I treasure. But again, this is wonderful as well. So,
all right, it's good.
Yeah,
I'm really upset that Frank Miller stopped making any comics after the mid '90s, and definitely didn't do anything super racist, right?
Oh, I can't think of anything really weird or just career marring that he may have done.
Oh man, poor guy. Poor guy. Hey, he's still around, and I mean, The Shadow was a bad movie. Poor Frank Miller. The Spirit. I'm sorry, I made that mistake yesterday too. He directed The Spirit, not The Shadow.
Oh, okay.
But this is not a weird pulp movies podcast. This is an X-Men podcast. And if you like X-Men stuff, you can mosey on over to my website, XavierFiles.com, where I have weekly articles about different X-Men characters. If you really enjoy all the stuff that I'm doing with Xavier Files, with Battle of the Atom, with Legion Quest, which is my other podcast that I have not plugged in the first 2 episodes.
I was going to say, you haven't mentioned Legion Quest, which is great.
I haven't. We're on hiatus because the show is on hiatus.
Good reason.
Yeah, it's tough. We got a new episode coming up for SDCC, which will be old by the time you all hear this, but go download it. Which I do that with Matt Sibley from Newsarama. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, all that stuff. It's funded by Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/XavierFiles, we have, for as little as $1, cool rewards you can get. You can cut in line for requests. We're going to be retooling some stuff for Battle of the Atom, so there'll be some new rewards there. Take a look. And if you want to chat, talk about X-Men, do anything, hit me up on twitter.com/XavierFiles. And Adam, where can people find you online?
If you want to see me on Twitter, you can go over to @ArthurStacy, and then my website is adamrec.tumblr.com, which is where I publish my webcomic Bish and Jubes, which also appears on Xavier Files. Thank you for that. And that's generally where you can keep an eye on what I'm up to.
All right. So we had we're up to 9 now. We're about to hit double digits next time we do this.
I think we're off to a good start.
Yeah, it'll be great. So we will talk to you guys next week. We are still coming up with the catchphrase because, again, we're doing all this in one day. I got to figure out an end thing, but that's for the next recording. Adios? Does adios work? I don't think so.
We got to figure something out there.
We're going to be rambling. Later.
Get it!